Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio is unquestionably the roller coaster capital of the world. While they may no longer have the most, the park paved the way for groundbreaking rides, some of which helped revolutionize the amusement park industry. And to this day, this 150-year-old plus park on a peninsula is home to 16 roller coasters of all shapes and sizes. In my opinion, it's the best coaster collection in the country. In this video, I'll be counting down my favorite Cedar Point roller coasters from worst to best. I will be including all 16 coasters currently operating at the park. And just for fun, I'll throw in the recently removed Wicket Twister. I will not be including Pipe Scream, no matter how much Cedar Point says it's a coaster. All the stats in this video come from the roller coaster database. And remember, this is my personal list, and I'm sure your ranking will be different than mine. With that out of the way, let's get on with the countdown. Number 17, Wilderness Run. Fun fact, this is the first ever roller coaster from Swiss manufacturer Intamin, which we will see plenty of later in the countdown. Every company starts out small, and Wilderness Run is definitely a mild and quirky kiddie coaster. It's definitely a great beginner ride by standing at a dizzying 19 feet tall, along 443 feet of track, and reaching a blistering speed of 6 miles an hour. This is actually an elusive credit for enthusiasts, and adults are not allowed to ride. Going off of my early rides as a kid, it's serviceable and a unique kiddie coaster. All I know is that it will always be Junior Gemini to me. Number 16, Woodstock Express. This is the perfect step up from Wilderness Run, standing taller at 48 feet, longer at 1,099 feet, and faster at 28.5 miles per hour, but still smooth and mild enough for the kids to enjoy. Family and adults can ride along together on this one. Woodstock Express focuses on swooping turns and gradual drops just like other Vekoma roller skater models. This one has a cute theme to the Peanuts, with Woodstock leading the locomotive-themed trains. Not too much to say about this, but overall, a good family coaster. Number 15, Cedar Creek Mine Ride. I know some may not like this being low on the list, but I'm not exactly a big fan of Cedar Creek Mine Ride. This was Arrow's third ever mine train, and the layout is very simple, with Arrow's trademark rough transitions. And while that can sometimes work in a ride's favor, this one in particular is very uncomfortable. I think the main culprit is its restraints. The shared T-bar has to lock so low, and riders should not have to cross their legs under the seats in order to fit. Along the 2,540-foot course, there are rough and awkward turns, hills, and 2 lifts, the highest being 48 feet. You reach a top speed of 42 miles per hour, but it definitely doesn't feel like it. I will admit, I do like the drop over the water and the double helix finale, but overall, it's slow, rough, and boring, and I hope the park can somehow fix this ride to be a bit more re-rideable. Number 14, Corkscrew. Continuing with another Arrow is probably one of the most iconic roller coasters in the world. Corkscrew stands as a great centerpiece in the middle of the park. When opened in 1976, it was one of the first major custom looping coasters in the country, and the first to go upside down 3 times. It stands 85 feet tall and features some airtime going down the drop and camelback after at 48 miles an hour. Then it's a vertical loop and the namesake corkscrews going over the midway. And that's it. Only 2,050 feet long. Corkscrew has definitely aged among other looping coasters, including those at Cedar Point. It has also gotten pretty bumpy over the years. But I can't stay too mad at this ride. It has great historical significance and has become an icon. It's definitely a ride that looks better than it rides, and I do ride it from time to time. Number 13, Iron Dragon. Suspended coasters are becoming a dime a dozen. Iron Dragon is the oldest operating one, and admittedly, it is the mildest of the bunch. But that does not make it a bad ride. With 2 lift hills, a max height of 76 feet, 2,800 feet of track, and a top speed of 40 miles an hour, this is a good intermediate ride. Iron Dragon is a nice flight through one of the few wooded areas of Cedar Point. The swinging cars help elevate the experience as you swoop around the turns and cross under the track. My favorite part is the Helix finale over the water. The few spots you can see of the ride look very nice. On the thrill factor, there is not much to it, but I still feel there is enough that everyone can enjoy it. Number 12, Wicket Twister. This has joined the ever-growing list of defunct coasters at Cedar Point. I was lucky enough to give it one last ride this past season before, well, this was built as direct competition towards Six Flags Ohio, where they unveiled the first Twisted Impulse coaster, Superman Ultimate Escape, in the year 2000. 2 years later, Cedar Point broke records in typical fashion with Wicket Twister, the tallest at 215 feet, the fastest at 72 miles an hour, and the only double twisting inverted impulse. For this ride, what you saw is what you got. You admittedly got great linear induction launches, and you got a slight sense of weightlessness and disorientation going up the towers. I especially thought sitting in the back, looking down the back spike, was especially surreal. However, over the years, the track got more rough and the restraints more tight. Honestly, this was a ride I enjoyed watching more than riding. It really was a nice looking coaster along the beach and water. While it did sometimes provide a quick adrenaline rush, it wasn't a ride many parkgoers sought out to ride, myself included. I'd be lucky to ride Wicket Twister once a season. While I thought the ride was just okay, it did leave lasting memories for many. Number 11, Rougarou. Kicking off the B&Ms at the park is probably the most forgettable of the bunch. However, it has quite a history. It originally opened in 1996 as a record-breaking stand-up coaster named Mantis. It was converted into a floorless coaster in 2015. Rougarou, or French for werewolf, does make a statement with its tall 145-foot lift, 137-foot drop, and 119-foot vertical loop right in your face over the water and next to the midway. At a top speed of 60 miles an hour, you also speed through a 103-foot dive loop, an 83-foot incline loop, and a corkscrew, making up 4 inversions. Admittedly, the drop is decent, and the loops are quite intense, but the rest of the ride has meandering turns that don't do too much. And unlike the other B&Ms, Rougarou has a bit of a rattle that can bang your head on the restraints. When I was younger, I actually enjoyed Mantis, but I understood why it changed. But even with the floorless trains, the ride layout did not. And with your feet dangling, it almost feels like an inferior version of Raptor, this time with the track below you. At least Mantis was more unique in the lineup. I used to not like this ride, but over the years I have learned to ride it, and I do think it is okay, with some good moments. But overall, there are definitely better floorless coasters out there. Number 10, Blue Streak. Currently the oldest operating coaster and only wooden coaster at the park, Blue Streak is a classic out-and-back design that actually gives several good moments of airtime. I also like the aesthetics of this ride, with the painted blue structure and the cupola at the top of the 78-foot tall lift. you drop 72 feet at 48 miles an hour, go all the way toward the front entrance, and then back with hill after hill along its 2,558 feet of wooden track. It's an old, simple, and effective layout. Now, I've been riding Blue Streak for years, and unfortunately, my rides have been rather inconsistent. Sometimes it can be a smooth ride, while other times it can be quite rough. Also, the modified PTC trains with high seatbacks and individual lap bars can make it a little uncomfortable. But for me, these reasons hold back Blue Streak slightly on my rankings. But at a park filled with mega steel coasters, a classic Woody making it into the top 10 is commendable. Number 9, Valravn. If this ride was built at any other park, it would be one of the best rides there. But because it's at Cedar Point, it's only number 9 for me. Extremely popular with the general public, Valravn opened beating every dive coaster record. Its gimmick is that it holds the large passenger vehicle over the edge at 223 feet before plunging 214 feet at 90 degrees straight down. Reaching a top speed of 75 miles per hour, Valravn powers through a giant 165-foot implement, a second drop, a dive loop, a slow zero-G roll, and a camelback hill through its 3,415-foot layout. The stats are definitely on the ride side. It also does have good moments of positive Gs and hang time. It's smooth and the views are spectacular as you hold over the Cedar Point Midway and look across Lake Erie. There's a lot going for it, but what holds this one back slightly for me are its vest restraints. These unfortunately prevent you from getting any hint of true airtime. Also, the pacing is killed by the mid-course, as do for all dive coasters. But in the end, I still like Valravn. It's just not one of the first rides I run to. There's a lot of competition in this park. Number 8, Gemini. Originally opened in 1978 as the largest roller coaster in the world, today, Gemini is the perfect first big coaster for any coaster rider. It's 125 feet tall, drops 118 feet at 55 degrees, and goes 60 miles per hour. The ride is not too intense, but it certainly isn't forceless. Some of the hills provide some great moments of airtime, and those helixes that split from one another have great laterals. What is ultimately a supersized mine train, it has its bumps and kinks, but it's generally one of the smoothest aero coasters out there. But what I like about Gemini the most is its racing aspect. For almost the entire 3,950-foot track length, you are parallel with another train. That is, if both sides are running. I'm a sucker for racing coasters, and racing on Gemini makes the ride twice as fun. With 2 tracks and high capacity, Gemini typically has one of the shortest lines in the park, and that makes this one of my most ridden rides at Cedar Point. This ride is just fun to the finish. Number 7, GateKeeper. What has become a new icon for Cedar Point, you cannot deny that GateKeeper is a great looking roller coaster. Spanning from the beachfront to the main entrance, with its bright blue track and the towering keyholes, it certainly creates a great first impression entering the park. But how does it ride? While many enthusiasts like to rip apart GateKeeper, I personally really like it. With 6 inversions during 4,164 feet, you glide gracefully element by element at 67 miles per hour. But surprisingly, at the bottom of the large hills and loops, I feel you actually pull some good positive Gs. So no, I don't think this is boring and forceless. Highlights are the 164-foot wing over drop, 0G roll in the keyholes, dive loop, and the slow inline twist. Admittedly, the dip and helix after the mid-course are a dud, but that's the last stretch of the ride. But the biggest factor of GateKeeper are the wing seats. Riding on either the left or the right gives a different ride experience, and so does riding the more graceful front or the more forceful back. There is a lot of variety and re-rideability. This still record-breaking wing coaster feels like a near-complete ride. All that makes this a must-ride for me. Number 6. Raptor. Almost 30 years later, this ride still kicks butt and is definitely my favorite B&M in the park. Once breaking all the invert records, Raptor is 137 feet tall, a half-twisting 119-foot drop, 6 inversions, and tight helixes throughout 3,750 feet of overhead track. The elements come at a rapid-fire pace, and at least on my trips recently, the mid-course has been very light on the brakes, so you are flying. It feels faster than its advertised 57 mph top speed. The transitions are whippy. You sometimes get that stomach-dropping sensation. And if it wasn't for Maverick, this would be the most intense coaster at Cedar Point, I feel. It's almost like it's going to rip your feet off at times. Raptor has that old-school B&M feel, with ultra-intense positive Gs, smooth track, and an occasional jarring transition. I'm looking at you, final turn into the brakes. It may just be its ideal placement along and over the Cedar Point midway, or its great ride experience, but this ride is almost as popular as it was when it opened. It's definitely one of my favorite inverted coasters I have been on. Number 5. Top Thrill Dragster. On paper, this is not a good roller coaster, with an actual ride duration of around 17 seconds and only going up and down one hill. However, this Strata Accelerator coaster is a great adrenaline-filled thrill ride. With only a small lap bar and a seatbelt holding you in, you feel exposed to the powerful 0 to 120 mph launch. You pull great G-force going up the 420-foot top hat before spiraling back down. You get a great view of the park and Lake Erie, and it feels surreal to look down on Millennium Force. Before you know it, you hit the brakes. But logistically, you cover 2,800 feet of track very quickly. Coming close to 20 years old, Top Thrill Dragster still shocks me in the best ways possible. It's still a smooth and comfortable ride, and the light drag racing theming is extremely effective, with the sound effects, lights, and bleachers. And if you're an enthusiast, a front seat ride on Top Thrill Dragster is mandatory, being completely exposed to the ride's raw power and speed. While I can be frustrated at times with this attraction, mainly due to its inconsistent operations, I always come off gasped with a smile on my face. Build up the courage and definitely try to ride this at least once. Number 4. Millennium Force. I don't know whether to call this ride elite, overrated, or underrated. What I can say is Millennium Force is an extremely fun giga coaster. You begin with that iconic 310-foot cable lift along the shore of Lake Erie, dropping 300 feet. This is definitely one memorable drop. The rest of the ride includes large overbank turns, floater airtime hills, and 2 tunnels across its impressive 6,595-foot layout, making it the longest coaster at Cedar Point. Like Dragster, you only have a small lap bar and seatbelt, and it runs smooth. A front seat ride is also an adrenaline rush, but the back too has good whip going down the drops. While it may not be the most intense compared to more modern coasters, Millie is very re-rideable. It focuses on speed for a long ride duration, reaching up to 93 miles per hour, and there's nothing boring about that. I have no doubts that this is Cedar Point's most successful coaster, and a visit is not complete without riding it. For years, this was my #1 coaster overall. As I've traveled more and rode some newer coasters, it has fallen a little bit for me, but it still holds up very well, and I completely understand why this would be someone's favorite. And just to think, this fantastic ride is only my #4. This just emphasizes how top tier Cedar Point's collection is. #3. Maverick. Believe it or not, when I first rode this, I wasn't a huge fan. I found it uncomfortable with its hard restraints. But since the softer over-the-shoulder harnesses were installed in 2015, this made the ride way better. Instead of riding defensively, you can now let your body be thrown around at the mercy of this extremely intense blitz coaster. This rather short coaster is only 105 feet tall. Other than opening with the steepest drop at 95 degrees, Maverick was not built to break records. Instead, it is a jack of all trades. You want intensity? Positive G's galore with very tight transitions. You want airtime? Some incredible moments of ejector. You want inversions? 2 very quick flips on the twisted horseshoe roll. You want launches? There are 2 great ones. An incline one to get things started, and an enclosed straight launch that spits you out of a tunnel at 70 miles per hour. That second launch is one of my all-time favorite moments on a coaster. Throw in a stangle dive, fast turns, and natural elements like water and rock work, and you have a near complete coaster with a nice long ride time across 4,450 feet of track. For years, I had this lower in my rankings, but I had some truly phenomenal rides last year, where I found myself bumping this ride up. If you came to me and said Maverick was your favorite roller coaster, I would not argue. But there is another Cedar Point coaster that too gets better and better every time I ride it. #2. Magnum XL-200. Often credited as the first shot heard in the major coaster wars we still see today, Magnum was the first hypercoaster, standing 205 feet and dropping at 195 feet at 72 miles per hour across 5,106 feet. This classic aero still has impressive stats to this day. But what I love about Magnum so much is its unduplicated experience. It has intense moments and airtime hills that send you into the stratosphere, but the profiling on these elements are not so smooth and precise as other coasters built today. That's because the track was hand welded on site during construction. So it almost feels like a giant wooden coaster, but made of steel. Being jostled around in those simple trains with a flimsy lap bar, I can't help but laugh. At the same time, I'm taken by surprise by the violent ejector airtime that even rivals more modern coasters. No 2 rides on Magnum are the same, with many variables playing an effect on the overall ride experience. The seat you ride, train load, weather, and trim brakes are always varied. Again, similar to a wood coaster. This may turn away riders, but for me it keeps me coming back. Magnum also has that 80s charm with the futuristic looking trains and 3 tunnels, the last one having synthwave sound effects and lights. And to top it off, Magnum, in my opinion, has the best location at Cedar Point, jetting out away from the park and running through the water park and along the beach. Its isolated spot makes the ride feel much bigger than it is, even among taller rides around it. My rides in 2021, especially towards the back, were truly memorable and exhilarating. The more I talk about this, the more I want to ride it, and seeing how it generally gets short lines, this may be my most ridden coaster at Cedar Point. I understand if you ride Magnum and don't like it. It's not for everyone, but Magnum fans know that this ride is special. Number 1. Steel Vengeance. I know this sounds stereotypical for an enthusiast to put this at their number 1, but when you sit back and reevaluate what this ride is able to do, it is as close to a masterpiece as you can get. Originally opened as Mean Streak in 1991, this behemoth of a wooden coaster was almost universally disliked. While I personally didn't hate it, it could have been better, and RMC definitely made it better. It's now taller at 205 feet with a 200-foot drop at 90 degrees straight down. It's now faster as it rips through its tangled track at 74 miles per hour. It's now longer at 5,740 feet, and man, this ride feels like it goes on forever. It's way smoother than it used to be, and being a wild ride is an understatement. So many memorable moments. The top hat, outward bank hill, 4 various 0G rolls, the double up, the drop off the mid-course, mini wave turn, and so many airtime hills. This claims to have the most airtime on any coaster, and I 100% believe it. You are thrown around and lifted out of your seat so much it feels like bull riding. And while the restraints can be a little tight, I definitely appreciate that this kind of ride only has lap bars and a seatbelt. And being a hybrid coaster with its wooden superstructure adds that extra element of surprise. Many elements are hidden inside, where towards the end you start to lose sense of direction. It feels like Steel Vengeance was designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. RMC and Cedar Point worked together to transform a mediocre coaster into one of the best in the world. While Magnum is pure fun and Maverick is pure insanity, Steel Vengeance is pure fun and insanity. It takes my breath away and I find myself laughing every time I hit the brakes. Sometimes I doubt if Steel Vengeance really is as good as everyone hypes it up to be, but then I take one ride and am immediately proven wrong. Even when it's running slower and not to its fullest potential, this is still one of the best coasters ever. But when you get a backseat ride at night with the trims off, this is some of the most fun I've ever had on a roller coaster. And in the end, that's why amusement parks and roller coasters are made, to have those memorable experiences. And that's my ranking of every Cedar Point roller coaster. Cedar Point is a very fun amusement park that somehow manages both quantity and quality. I'm spoiled enough to visit Cedar Point every year and ride some of these great attractions on an annual basis. If I made this list tomorrow, it would probably look different. Just remember, ranking these are in good fun. So I want to hear from you. What are your favorite roller coasters at Cedar Point? Let me know down in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you like it and subscribe for more roller coaster and amusement park content. And with that being said, thank you all for riding, and I'll see you next time.